Hello everyone and welcome back to day 12 of our 30-day study challenge. Thanks so much for being with us today. Today is day 12. We're going to be talking about feedback mechanisms in biology, feedback loops, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. If you're here for a cram, a study session, or you just want to learn more about biology, welcome, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any days of the 30-day study challenge. Today we're going to be doing a content review and then some practice questions, so stick with us the whole time so you can really lock in on those active studies strategies. All right, let's get started. So feedback is used by organisms to maintain their internal environments and respond to internal and external changes. We can also see feedback loops at the cellular level, the organismal level, or at an environmental or population level. Feedback is a response within a molecule, cell, organism, even an ecosystem that influences the continued activity or productivity of a system. Feedback loops help regulate homeostasis, or the internal balance all organisms need to survive. So the failure to maintain homeostasis can cause disease or death, meaning that the failure to maintain feedback loops can also lead to disease or death. Feedback loops are really important in biologic systems. I'm going to review some of the types of them right now. There are both what we call negative feedback loops and positive feedback loops. These don't mean something that are good or bad, rather they refer to the inhibition or slowing down of a system versus the amplification or the increase of a system. Negative feedback loops result in the inhibition or the slowing down of a process, moving something back to that set point, that internal balance that an organism wants to maintain. Positive feedback loops, on the other hand, amplify a signal or some sort of output. Now, negative feedback loops, like I said, will work to maintain homeostasis and go back toward a set point. Positive feedback loops are generally going away from a set point, and they're working against what the normal system would normally be. This isn't a bad thing, but generally it's not normal. In negative feedback loops, these are more common within organisms and they maintain various body systems. Our temperature regulation, our blood pressure regulation, our blood sugar regulation are all examples of how negative feedback loops help us maintain our internal environments. You may see an example of blood pressure or blood sugar regulation on an AP exam, so we're going to go over what that could look like in just a moment. Positive feedback loops, though less common, are still necessary in certain situations. Childbirth and having the contractions of the uterus in order to deliver a child is obviously really important for mammals. Fruit ripening, producing ethylene, for example, is another positive feedback loop that's necessary for the ripening of apples on a tree. Lactation in mammals also is helped by positive feedback loops and the release of oxytocin, and blood clotting as well, which we'll go over as an example in this video. So a negative feedback loop, remember, is going back towards a set point. So if we start with a normal blood pressure and then an organism is exposed to stress, the blood pressure would rise above normal. Now the body receptors are going to detect change and then decrease a heart rate and increase the blood vessel diameter. These effects will then help decrease the blood pressure and bring the blood pressure back to normal, back to that set point. This feedback loop would then stop here unless the body is exposed to more stress. A positive feedback loop related to blood clotting kind of works in a different way. If we have a break in a blood vessel wall from a cut or a laceration, platelets are then going to adhere to the site and start to release chemical signals. Those chemicals will then attract more platelets, and platelets will adhere to the site and release more chemical signals. This will continue to amplify the signal, which doesn't normally happen in the body, and more platelets will come until finally we have what's called a platelet plug that is formed at the site of the break. Then the cycle ends, we don't have any more chemicals to attract more platelets because we don't need them anymore. Similar with childbirth. Once the child is delivered, the contractions don't need to amplify because the goal has been achieved. But this entire process was not what normally happens. It goes away from homeostasis. Let's take a look at another positive feedback loop that can happen within the environment. Now, the positive feedback loop example I'm going to use is called ice albedo, and albedo indicates what percentage of solar radiation or sunlight is reflected by a surface. Generally, ice is white and very reflective, but the ocean surface is dark and absorbs heat faster. So when we have an environment where temperatures are rising and we have ice melting, the ice or the white reflective surface is going away, which is going to increase the water that's exposed and therefore absorb more heat in the environment. That'll then cause temperatures to rise and more ice to melt. The more ice that melts, the more water that is exposed, and you can see how this cycle is a positive feedback loop. Now, this isn't necessarily the same type of feedback that's going to happen within an organism or a cell, but it is an example of positive feedback within an ecosystem. So I want you thinking about this when we get to our unit on ecology. All right, it is that time again. Let's do some practice questions. And remember, you can always pause me, mute me, or go at this at your own pace if you would like. 1. What distinguishes positive feedback from negative feedback in biological systems? A. Positive feedback maintains equilibrium while negative feedback amplifies a response. B. Positive feedback maintains stability while negative feedback amplifies a response. C. Positive feedback leads to stabilization while negative feedback perpetuates change. Or D. Positive feedback amplifies a response while negative feedback maintains stability. Think about it. Correct answer is D. Positive feedback amplifies a response while negative feedback maintains stability, usually working towards homeostasis. Great job. 2. Which of the following processes maintains homeostasis? So we're looking for a negative feedback mechanism. A. Fruit ripening due to increased ethylene production. B. Sweat production during overheating. C. Population growth due to increased resource utilization. Or D. Uterine contractions during labor. Think about it. Correct answer is sweat production during overheating. By sweating, the human body gets to experience evaporative cooling, which brings the body temperature back down again. Classic example of negative feedback, thermoregulation in humans. A student got a cut on their finger. Sounds familiar? Which event is an example of positive feedback in response to the injury? A. Blood vessels near the injury constrict, slowing blood flow. B. White blood cells at the injury site fight off pathogens. C. Clotting platelets release chemicals that activate more clotting platelets. Or D. Tissues release signals that inhibit excess clotting to prevent scab formation. Think about it. Correct answer is C. Clotting platelets release chemicals that activate more clotting platelets. It's that amplification response, positive feedback mechanism. All right. Ethylene is a plant hormone that causes fruit to ripen. It causes physiological changes in nearby fruit cells, such as softening, color changes, flavor development, and aroma production. As a fruit ripens, it generates more ethylene gas. What kind of feedback mechanism best describes this phenomenon? A. Negative feedback. B. Positive feedback. C. Maintenance of homeostasis. Or D. Ethylene is not related to feedback in biological systems. Think about it. Correct answer is B. Positive feedback. We kind of give it away if you looked closely at the answer choices in a previous question. So that's always a key test taking strategy, is sometimes the answers in other questions can reveal the answers to other questions. But ethylene is a classic example of positive feedback in biological systems, so I hope you got that one right. Thanks so much for watching and practicing with us today. Tomorrow is day 13 of our 30-day study challenge. We're going to be talking about the cell cycle and mitosis. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any days of our 30-day study challenge or any of the other great studying resources on this channel. Thanks so much for watching. Give this video a like if it's been helpful, and I'll see you later.